For much of the 19th century, Imperial Russia, which included much of Poland, contained the world's largest Jewish population. However, Jews were banned from many jobs and locations. By the end of the 1940s, the communist leadership of former USSR had closed almost all Jewish organizations, with the exception of a few token synagogues, which were placed under police surveillance. During the Cold War in the 1960s, Soviet Jews were thought to be a security liability or possible traitors. Jews encountered institutional anti-Semitism, which blocked their opportunities for advancement. Soviet restrictions in religious education and expression prevented Jews from engaging in Jewish cultural and religious life. Slowly, the Jewish world took notice. Between 1967 and 1989, following the Six-Day War, Jewish activism in Russia and international support from Jewish religious and social organizations in the United States increased. They were ultimately successful in publicizing the plight of Soviet Jewry, giving the Jewish people one of its most remarkable modern-day success stories.
Hello, my name is Ann Polensky, and I was chair of the Soviet Jewry movement here in Phoenix in the 1970s and 80s. The basic premise of the movement was to draw attention to the cause of helping Soviet Jews emigrate from the Soviet Union to the free world. Bar and Bat Mitzvah Twinning was one of the techniques used by the various Soviet Jewry organizations throughout the country to publicize the plight of the Soviet Jews. Basically, it was a proxy ceremony by a bar or bat mitzvah child for a child in the Soviet Union who could not have a bar or bat mitzvah due to the persecution of the Jews in that country. In 1983, Jill Cooper was one of the children who came to me to have a bat mitzvah twin, and her twin's name was Maya.
We had 2 cakes at our daughter's bat mitzvahs, one for our daughter and one for her Soviet Union twin. We gave postcards to our bat mitzvah guests to send to each of our daughter's twins in the Soviet Union. I actually have one of the postcards right here that I will read to you. Dear Maya, I wanted you to know that I was a guest at the twinning of your bat mitzvah with Jill Cooper in Phoenix, Arizona, in the United States on December 15th, 1983. I am thinking about you and your family and sending good wishes to you on this special day. It was a wonderful time in our lives, a joyous occasion, but a very, very difficult lesson for our children about the harsh reality of life.
Good evening. Hopefully you all know who I am. I knew that I had to get Jill something memorable to thank her for all of the hard work she put into planning this amazing weekend in honor of Maya. But what do you get the woman who has everything? My search for the perfect gift began this past summer, but some background information first. Early on in our relationship, Jill told me about her bat mitzvah and the memorable experience of twinning her bat mitzvah with a girl from Russia, Maya Klitsch. The twinning experience helped Jill feel like her bat mitzvah had an international influence and heightened her sense of connection and Jewish pride and awareness. So much so that Jill never forgot Maya, even though they lost contact some months after the bat mitzvah. When Jill was pregnant and we were thinking of possible girl names that began with an M for my mother, Michael, there was little doubt in Jill's mind. Maya it would be, in large part due to Jill's positive recollections of her bat mitzvah twin, Maya Klitsch. A nice story, yes, but what about the gift part? Luckily, my mother-in-law Joyce keeps very meticulous records in her address book. In fact, 30 years later, she still had Maya's address in the Ukraine. I bet you're curious what happened next. Stay tuned.
My name is R.J. Kirshner. I'm a private investigator in Orange County, California. What we did is we took the initial information you gave us and we had people on the ground in the Ukraine attempt to locate Maya and her family. And we had a lot of difficulty doing that, likely because at the end they were living in the United States, but we didn't know that. So over periods of time, we had people checking on the ground to try and locate them. and we also utilized some international databases. But fortunately, during the course of all this unrest in the Ukraine, I had one last partner to tap over there, and I was able to get a hold of him, and he was able to point us in the right direction because he had a connection in the government where he determined that Maya and her family had emigrated to the United States.
Hi, my name is Maya. I'd like to thank Matt and his family for all the hard work it took them to find me. And I guess it all began when Jill and I were little girls about 30 years ago when we were twin bat mitzvah. Jill was living here and I was living in the former Soviet Union, where practicing religion, especially Judaism and learning Hebrew, were completely prohibited. And my family was persecuted their whole lives. My parents were refugees for 13 years. And then in 1988 I came to this country and I went to Jewish day school, which is located in Rockville, Maryland. I studied Hebrew, I studied everything about Jewish religion. I became a proud Jew, and I'm happy to have become the Jew that I am today. And then when I was a senior in high school, I went to Israel with my class, and where I studied even more about Jewish religion. And like I said, I could not thank Matthew enough for finding me. I'm so glad that I could be here today at Maya's Bat Mitzvah. So thank you very much.